you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, you see that little subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead, click the subscribe button. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Also, we have an Aaron Torres Pod NCAA Tournament Survivor Pool that we're running right now. It's simple. Pick a team every day. If they win, you advance. The only catch, you cannot pick the same team twice. $20 to enter, minimum $500. But the more of you who enter, the bigger the pot gets, maybe up to thousands of dollars. So link, show description. Now, the video you came for. This is a topic that's not going away. Okay, so topic of the day. Listen, you don't need me to tell you, bracket came out Sunday. We spent like 2 hours on the live stream breaking down the bracket, every single game, every single region. As I said, Tuesday night, I will make my official picks. But at the same time, here is what you need to know. Every single year, there is some kind of controversy with the NCAA tournament. Some year it's the 1 seed. Some year it's the bubble. Some years it's this. Some years it's that. Well, I bring it up because we have a controversy for the ages on our hands, and it involves the North Carolina Tar Heels, number 68 in the NCAA tournament. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this on Sunday night's show, but it's Monday. This story is only picking up steam. And why this is so interesting, why it is so fascinating is pretty straightforward. You guys and girls know the deal. You know why this is a huge story with a lot of tentacles. It's very simple. One, North Carolina's in the tournament. Why it is kind of crazy is because, I don't want to say literally, but basically literally, there were essentially zero bracketologists that had North Carolina in the field. Okay, listen, we've gone through their resume, one quad one win, 1-12 in quad one overall. They have a quad 3 loss to Stanford. We don't need to get into all that. But what I will tell you, and we said this on Sunday night show, is that the bracketology community, okay, like those guys, I think sometimes in sports, there can be groupthink in terms of, thought process, right? So like I used the example on Sunday, but Shedeur Sanders, does everyone really believe he's not a first-round pick, or did one person hear it and it kind of became a thing of telephone? Well, I bring it up because bracketology is not like that at all, okay? Bracketology, all of these guys and girls are competing. They get ranked on some website. What is it? Bracket Matrix, I think, is what it is. And so everybody's trying to prove that they're the best at this thing. Everyone's trying to prove that they're the best version of Joe Lunardi, and they're the next Joe Lunardi, and ESPN or Fox or CBS should hire them, okay? And so these guys are ranked, and really the margins are so thin that basically, it doesn't behoove you to just follow everybody else's lead. So when virtually every single bracketologist did not have North Carolina in the field, that's not groupthink, that's not coincidence. It was at best a weird decision by the selection committee, okay? But here's where it gets a little bit more complicated, and this is where we need to talk about it. It is the fact that, of course, the chairman of the NCAA Tournament Committee was, of course, UNC athletic director Bubba Cunningham. Okay. And so this became a story overnight. It picked up steam into the morning. But there are a lot of frustrations from a lot of fan bases that were left out, specifically West Virginia, specifically Indiana. We're going to get to the West Virginia governor here in a minute. But I just bring it up because there is so much controversy around what is going on. And as people dig deeper into this, it looks sketchy, okay? Listen, I know that these guys are supposed to recuse themselves from the room when the bracket is, when their team is talked about in the bracket. But at the same time, there's a couple variables here. One, somebody online found a copy of Bubba Cunningham's contract where apparently he is paid $104,000 every single time North Carolina makes the NCAA tournament. By the way, sweet gig if you can get it. 6 figures for North Carolina to make the tournament. By the way, North Carolina should make the tournament every year. So you just get a $100,000 bonus every March. Must be nice. Torres doesn't know much about it. Sorry, producer Matt. That bonus ain't coming for you either. But the bottom line is $100,000, and everyone's like, Team 69 got a little bit weird. But you know what else was weird as well? As I was watching this, and as I think a lot of other people were watching it, I want to give credit to my radio partner, Dan Byer. Okay, so on Sunday, I was on the Fox Sports Radio National Selection Show, 600 station nationwide, all over the country, whatever. And we're reacting in real time to the bracket. So first of all, it was kind of crazy because first of all, I saw North Carolina on the screen before he did. He said, Ole Miss is the 6th seed in this region. And, he's looking down to make sure to have his notes ready. And I said, oh my goodness, look who they could potentially play. And of course, it was North Carolina versus their now opponent, San Diego State. But where I want to give Dan Beyer credit was after the bracket came out. We were on air until 8 p.m. Eastern time, which obviously was the totality of the bracket show. And on the bracket show, it wasn't just Bubba Cunningham, the chairman of the NCAA Tournament Committee, that was interviewed by CBS. Remember, CBS always brings in the chairman of the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to kind of explain this team was left in, this team was left out, this team was brought in, why was this, why was that, blah, 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 blah. And right away you see, the co-chair is also on TV with him. And Dan Beyer right away said, listen, man, I've been doing this a long time. Me and Beyer have done the NCAA Tournament Selection Show for 6 straight years. The first year we were scheduled to do it was March of 2020. So there was no bracket to reveal. But every Selection Sunday from 2020 on, I have been on air with Dan Beyer. And so I only bring it up because he goes, dude, I've been doing this forever. I have never, ever seen the selection committee chair have to bring on a second person to speak with him and on behalf of him. And the logic obviously being, of course, that if he really has recused himself, then he can't really talk about Carolina. He can't really explain, in theory, why Carolina was either left in or left out. So the second guy on the committee had to come in and actually speak. What I did not realize, though, in real time, credit to Dan for figuring it out, was that CBS actually announced the day before, I think it was Friday or Saturday, that the co-chair would be joining Bubba Cunningham for all of the TV interviews. It has certainly led to a lot of speculation. It has certainly led to a lot of interesting conversation. And I'll tell you what, the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, Matt Norlander, Gary Parrish has been on this show many years ago, but they talked about this on their show, thought this was very interesting, talking about the fact that you have the co-chair joining Bubba Cunningham. Here is what those two guys had to say.
How surprised were you when North Carolina was announced as an 11 seed set to play San Diego State in the first 4?
I actually wasn't surprised North Carolina was in the bracket. And you want to know why? This was my own surmising. I obviously did not have a hint of the bracket beforehand. But every year, and I don't even know if this was the case, by the way, but when we were building out to do the interviews.
I think you're about to say the exact same thing I noticed as well, but go ahead.
So, the plan becomes, the plan had been to be clear, this is not like, at 4:47, the plan changed. It was, I want to say yesterday, hey, we're going to do Bubba Cunningham and Keith Gill. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then I was like, wait a second. If Bubba Cunningham, this has never happened before, where, on CBS Sports HQ, where I did the interview, on CBS Sports Network, where you and the crew do the interviews there, it's always just the chair. And I thought, are they preparing in the event that Carolina gets in that, I can't ask the chair because he's not in the room when Carolina gets in. So in all honesty, Parrish, I thought there was a real possibility that Carolina was going to get in because they.
So CBS Sports, they picked up the same thing that we did live on Fox Sports Radio. The co-chair was in. I think they said the name was Keith Grant. Maybe if I missed it, I apologize, whatever. But they picked up on it right away. And listen, let me say this, is that I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy. But what I did say, you know what this actually reminds me of? Another thing that I happened to be on air for, Fox Sports Radio. I was on air when the Luka Doncic trade happened, okay? And what I keep saying about the Luka trade, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not saying that something fishy happened. But if you want to put the puzzle pieces together and make the argument that something is sketchy, yeah, you can absolutely do it about Luka, and you can absolutely do it about the North Carolina situation. I'm not saying anything did happen, but I certainly think you can put the puzzle pieces together and ask some tough questions, okay? First of all, but before we even dive into it, let me say this. None of us know. None of us probably ever will know. But what I would also say is I'll defend Carolina for half a second. if they scheduled the co-chair with Bubba Cunningham, before the selection show, there is like a pseudo explanation for that. The explanation is, of course, just that, North Carolina is going to be the biggest story one way or the other. North Carolina is either going to be the biggest story because they got left out and we need to talk about it, or they're going to be a huge story because they got in and no one can explain it, so we need to talk about it. So you understand why the committee chair would then, in theory, the committee co-chair would then, in theory, be on set with Bubba Cunningham to basically explain, like, yeah, no matter what happens, he in theory can't explain it because he in theory has to recuse himself. So I understand in theory why they would schedule this guy ahead of time. But again, like I said, I just think the whole thing, what do they say? It reeks to the high heavens, okay? First off, the crazy part was, listen, first of all, you can't tell me that even if Bubba Cunningham recuses himself, that there is no moment in time that North Carolina is spoken about when he's in the room. At some point, you have to finalize a bracket, and he is going to, in theory, be in the room no matter what, okay? So that's one. Two, what I will also say is when they went to the committee co-chair, he didn't really have a real explanation as to why they actually put Carolina in. You know what his explanation was? We talked about it on Sunday's show. His explanation was, well, they were actually team 69, and if UAB had won, they would have gotten the last spot. It's like, yeah, that's how it always works. If you have a team that's only going to get in if they win their conference tournament, then yes, they will knock out an at-large, and if they lose, then the last at-large gets in. But what was never answered was, what was on North Carolina's resume that was that much better than Indiana? What was on their resume that was that much better than West Virginia? Because there is no explanation. The explanation was, well, they were team 69 and then UAB lost, so they became team 68. Yeah, that's how math works, okay? You don't need to be a bracketologist to figure it out. So the explanation stinks. We know Cunningham was in there. Listen, I've heard other people say this, and I think it's totally fair, is like, even if guys recuse themselves, these people spend time together, and I don't know. It feels weird to me. You can't tell me that they're not having meals together, that they're not having this together, that they're not having that together. And all of those other people on the committee having to look that guy in the eye over a course of 4 or 5 days, I do think it has to play some sort of role, okay? Beyond that, let me also say this. Beyond that, let me also explain this. I do think it is time to shake up this selection process, okay? First of all, I've been on this for years. First, let me even backtrack. I said this, I was doing a radio hit earlier in the day on Monday. I think we have to stop playing conference championship games on Sunday because, one, they serve no purpose. Michigan's got no benefit by winning the Big Ten. Florida was already seemingly locked in as a number 1 seed before they won the SEC tournament. So there's no gain to it. And two, I really do think we have to give the committee, give them 12 hours. Finish the games at 1, 2 a.m. Eastern on Saturday, and then release the bracket on Sunday at 6 p.m. Give them 12 hours. Give us 12 hours in the media to react and overreact and overthink about it. But give them 12 hours to just look at this bracket and say, does this actually make sense? Is this justifiable? I'll give you an example that I used on Sunday. I think there is zero explanation for Louisville being an 8 seed in the same region as the number 1 overall seed Auburn, where they are going to have to play in Lexington. Auburn just got screwed by being the number 1 overall seed. And I think you have to give the committee time to look at the bracket and say, this doesn't make sense. Let's think about this. Let's take a deep breath and let's figure out another way to make this work, because the bracket kind of sucked this year, to be perfectly honest. I also just think, I don't know if we have to completely eliminate, the athletic directors, but at the same time, we have to do something, right? Because one, no matter who you have on a committee, there's always going to be some sort of bias, but there is obviously bias and there is financial incentive, quite literally, for these guys to help each other out, or for these guys to push for their own schools, for their own conferences, whatever. So there's the literal incentive of money for these guys and girls on this committee. And then two, here's the other thing. And this is what I always go back to. How much basketball are these people actually watching? Bubba Cunningham is the athletic director at North Carolina, okay? He runs a department that has 30 athletic sports, 25 athletic sports. He just hired a football coach. He had to help Bill Belichick put together a staff, NIL plans, this, that, the other thing. He's helping Hubert Davis hire a GM over the last couple weeks. You think this dude has time to watch Boise State, Colorado State in the Mountain West on a Thursday night? Of course not. He's watching his team. He's paying. He doesn't have time, and nobody on that committee has time. And so I think it's time to shake this thing up a little bit. Listen, the college football playoff committee isn't perfect, but at least you have former coaches on that committee. And think about all the coaches that are sitting there doing nothing right now in college basketball. Boeheim's available. Tony Bennett's available. Coach K's available. Jay Wright's available. Now, listen, I know all of them wouldn't do it. I know all of them can't do it, whatever. But I just sit there and say, like, can we do a little bit better with this committee? Can we have a little bit less bias? By the way, I think we should get a couple bracketologists on there. I said it on Sunday's show. These bracketology guys are crazy with their knowledge, and I guarantee you, you pull up one of these good bracketology guys that loves this stuff, that eats, sleeps, and breathes it, I promise you, they have a better understanding of who should be in and who shouldn't. And so it's a crazy story. There's no explanation. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I think definitively something sketchy happened, but I think there's enough smoke that there could be fire. And I think it's something that, I don't think it's going away. I don't think it's going away.